Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War Update Extra video, giving you the extra tidbits and nuggets to get your teeth into to give you a greater understanding of the war in Ukraine. Words are difficult. This is a fact. They're difficult for me, anyway. We're going to go to a really fascinating article that's just come out from Shashank Joshi at The Economist, the defense correspondent. Talks about the article is called Russia's Army is Learning on the Battlefield and talks about how the Russian army isn't just this bungling bunch of misfits that make bad decisions all the time and this and that, but actually they have adapted in a number of key places and they are performing much better in those areas. Let's go to it then. The most important is basic infantry tactics. Russia started the war using battalion tactical groups, or BTGs. Remember, we used to talk about them all the time. Formation of 800 or so men equipped in theory with armor, artillery, and air defenses. These turned out to be woefully under strength and tactically inept. It has since torn up that structure. Russia now sends small packets of disposable infantry, a handful of men at a time, often under the influence of amphetamines, to skirmish until killed. Different claims about that. There's some claims that they aren't on drugs, some claiming they are using drugs. There's different claims regarding this. It's not so much a human wave as a human trickle, but it reveals Ukrainian positions and uses up Ukrainian ammo. Then larger groups of better trained assault infantry move in, backed up by armor, mortars, and artillery. The speed with which Russian infantry dig and the scale at which they improve their fighting positions is noteworthy, say Watling and Reynolds. So Jack Watling and Nick Reynolds are working at the Royal United Services Institute, which is a UK-based think tank. Russian engineers have done particularly well at building fortifications, laying bridges, and emplacing minefields. In some areas, defensive fortifications go back as far as 30 kilometers. Okay, another area they're improving is in artillery. Though the rate of fire is down 12 million rounds last year to a projected 7 million rounds this year, Russian gunnery is getting better. Reconnaissance drones are increasingly effective, allowing guns to strike Ukrainian targets within 3 to 5 minutes of detection. That is aided by growing use of the Strelets system, a small computer that connects drones and ground-based sensors with artillery batteries. A common tactic, say the authors, is for the Russians to withdraw from a position that is being assaulted and then saturate it with fire once Ukrainian troops attempt to occupy it. Possibly something that might be going on around Bakhmut, which is, yep, let the Ukrainians rush into this area. We know they're there, hit them with artillery. Now, there are differing claims about this. There are Russian intercepts and there are Russian videos that we've had and that we've seen and heard of the troops themselves saying, we call for artillery, it doesn't come, we get hit by our own artillery, all this kind of stuff. So these will be occasions where the Russians have improved, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can extrapolate it across the whole front line and that this is generally what's happening or always what is happening. So there will be areas where the Russians are still really struggling to do things effectively, to make the right decisions, to use the right techniques, so on and so forth. But there will be areas where they have learnt and they are, uh, you know, much more actively adhering to the kind of doctrine of what they should do. Um, then when it comes to armor tactics, they've been evolving as well. Instead of using armor to break through enemy lines, they're quite often using them at a safe distance. And indeed, I've seen, I said some time ago that when you had the announcement that T-55s being brought into Ukraine, that they were being taken out of storage, these old tanks, well, how would you use them? I said one of the options could be to use them as kind of glorified howitzers. And then someone absolutely took me to task saying, "That's ridiculous. You can't use that. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah." I was like, Actually," and this guy sounded like he knew what he was talking about. But then when I went and supported my claims with a whole bunch of evidence, hey, who knew? So in the Korean War, the Americans actually put tanks on mounds and then fired them up using them as indirect fire. You have examples in the Armenian and Azerbaijani conflict of T-55s being used in this way as indirect fire, or so indirect fire. You don't have to use them as like the angle of a howitzer, but you can just use that on your tank. but you can't. Indirect fire means you can't directly see what you're firing at. Like a rifle is direct fire. I'm shooting at you, and a tank is usually direct fire. It's like there's the enemy, I'm going to shoot that. But something that you can't see over the hill or in trenches, you can't. Don't you're firing it up and down. That's indirect fire. So tanks can use their barrels for indirect fire, but they can also be raised up to a higher angle so that they can be used a bit more like howitzers and get some further range and so on and so forth. Anyway, uh, here it's talking about them being used at a safe distance. Russian tanks are getting better at hiding by using thermal camouflage and fighting at dusk and dawn when their temperature signature is less obvious. Russia's reactive armor, which explodes outward to deflect incoming shots, has proved highly effective, with some tanks surviving multiple hits. And then it goes on to talk about electronic warfare, and this is a really important, one of the most neglected but most important aspects has been the improvement in electronic warfare, or EW. It is perhaps where Russian adaptation and improvement has been most impressive, according to Western and Ukrainian officials. Russia has deployed big EW systems for every 10-kilometer stretch of the front. They are largely aimed at drones, and they work. Ukraine is losing a staggering 10,000 drones per month, says the report, amounting to over 300 losses daily. EW is responsible for around half of those losses. Russia is also using EW to create decoys to confuse Ukrainian units. And then it goes on to talk about air defenses, often derided last year. They're stepping up too. They're increasingly connected, allowing them to share data on incoming threats, and are thus shooting down a significant proportion of strikes by GMLRS, the GPS-guided rounds fired from American HIMARS launchers that played havoc with Russian headquarters last year. Russia has been pulling those command and control centers further back, dispersing and hardening them and wiring them to Ukraine's own dense and robust telecoms network, with physical cables extended to brigades closer to the front. That's a big improvement. And they have also been, the HIMARS, sorry, have also been a victim to electronic warfare and jamming too. And there's this cat and mouse game, uh, in terms of overcoming the electronic warfare jamming, and then the electronic warfare jamming overcoming your overcoming, and then so on and so forth. It's this kind of arms race between the kind of the offense and the defense there. Um, these findings, so after saying in this article, Shashank Joshi, leaning on this Russi Royal United Services Institute report, then kind of leaves on a more positive note, saying, "Well, this all sounds a bit depressing, but it's not the end of the world." So these findings might give the impression that Ukraine's counteroffensive is doomed. That is far from the case. The key, conclude Watling and Reynolds, is not so much new weaponry as sound tactics. Quote, if Ukraine can disrupt Russian defenses and impose a dynamic situation on them, Russian units are likely to rapidly lose their coordination. End quote. Breaking through defenses and exploiting gaps, they say, will require getting the basics right: a stock of spare parts for donated equipment, manuals translated into Ukrainian, and good drills ahead of time. On May the 14th, British Defence Intelligence stated that Russian forces in Ukraine probably had no, quote, large capable mobile reserve to respond to emerging challenges. Russia's defense system is much improved. It's also brittle, and it can be smashed. Good stuff there. And there's no point deluding ourselves of the potency of the Russians. Uh, the Ukrainians are taking huge losses still in various places on the front line, in terms of no doubt equipment as well, especially drones, as you can see. So there you go. Right, we're going to talk about Pac2 and Pac3 Patriot missile systems. A little bit of intro into, I guess, what the Patriot is. Should we start? Now, where should we start? I guess we'll dip into this article on a Sandbox first. That kind of explains how this is the ultimate guide to the Patriot air defense system. So, what is the Patriot air defense system? It's comprised of multiple assets but serves a singular purpose: identifying and intercepting inbound threats ranging from aircraft to both cruise and ballistic missiles. So, cruise missiles cruise along and then blow up the target, often relatively slowly, as in they can be subsonic, but below the speed of sound. But that can allow them to be sort of stealthier and have different ways of flying, because if you're flying low, you're often under radar, and that means that you only pop up at the last minute and then it's too late, type thing. Ballistic missiles can go into the higher atmosphere, so there's less air resistance, and then can come down, gather in speed, and they're so quick that actually air defenses apparently can't take them out, apart from Patriot apparently now can. It hasn't really been tested, but anyway, that's a kind of difference there. Right. So, despite being developed with a focus on defending against high performance aircraft, there was a clear need for countering tactical missiles by the mid 80s. In the context, so Patriot's been around for some time, but it gets upgraded and upgraded, as many of these sort of systems do. There's a kind of flight. Oh, look, there's a picture that tells you exactly what I've just told you. So that's a ballistic missile with a flight path going up, out into the atmosphere and then coming back down. And a cruise missile flight path is very much different. It might sort of, you might have changes, maneuverability there, depending on what the missile is. As it says here, cruise missiles, on the other hand, can be thought of as akin to suicide drones. They're often powered by air-breathing jets, not unlike tactical aircraft, which allow them to fly under power along a more horizontal and unpredictable trajectory. These weapons fly at much lower speeds than ballistic missiles, but can be more dangerous due to their maneuverability and ability to use the curvature of the Earth to mask their approach. I love the fact that air defense and air. So when you've got radars, the curvature of the Earth, if a radar's poking in a straight line, then things can fly under the radar until a certain point because the radar's going up like that. Whereas so this is why you often get really high, tall masts that then lift the radar up, so you can have a I guess an angle. It can get further along the surface of the Earth, if you like, because it's sent up from higher, so the curvature of the Earth doesn't affect it as much. So I love the idea that air defense and offense both take into account that we kind of live on a globe. So flat earthers, as I said before, you could do one, quite frankly, because you're stupid, or at least you're not right. You may not be stupid, you're just not right. Okay, anyway, that's me digressing, obviously. So when we get on to what's involved with the Patriot air system, you can see air defense system. You can see that a battery consists of lots of things. So the Patriot system is usually deployed in batteries that are made up of 6 primary components, as well as some others depending on circumstance. So you've got the radar set, heavy expanded mobility tactical truck, electric power plant, battery maintenance center, Patriot Advanced Capability 3 launching station, Patriot Advanced Capability 2 launching station. So that's Pac3, Pac2, engagement control station, small repair parts trailer, antenna mast group, battery command post, large repair parts transporter. And there you go. So what can Pac2 and Pac3 interceptors really do? And I'm going to go back to the question, a comment here from Tom Westcott, who said, "Hi, ATP. I'm not sure you understand the difference between Pac2 and Pac3. Please set me right. Thank you for this. I'm no expert myself. As far as I'm aware, the Pac2 missiles are designed for short distance, but are no less effective than Pac3. They have infrared seekers on and are far more maneuverable than Pac3 and will lock onto any target they see in the direction they are fired. Pac3, on the other hand, can be fired using data link from far longer distances, and once they enter the area they are told to go to the basket, they activate their own radar and seek the target. This is the same concept as Fox 2 and Fox 3 air-to-air missiles. Therefore, I imagine both Pac 2 and Pac 3 can take down Killjoy, so a Kinjal ballistic missile, but the Pac 2 is used if the Pac 3 fails. Killjoys are actually very vulnerable to modern air defenses as they cannot deviate their course once fired. This is due to how high they must fly to become hypersonic. So this goes back to the image here. In order to get the speed, you need less air resistance, and so you have to fly up into the atmosphere where there isn't, so much air. At that altitude, the air is so thin that the missile cannot be steered and just follows a ballistic course. Also, a Killjoy actually loses speed as it nears a target due to the much increased air resistance. NATO missiles work to a different rhetoric. They are designed to be stealthy so the enemy doesn't know it's coming before popping up at the last minute and activating a secondary booster, which gives it kinetic energy for the impact on the target. And this is where it comes to what I was talking about the other day about how America, the US, and other nations have said, well, we could spend a shed load of money developing and manufacturing ballistic missiles, ballistic missiles. So missiles that can go so fast you can't defend against them, but it's cost prohibitive. And actually, you can defend against them because they are on a set course, and you just need to intercept that course from the front on. Whereas if we spend money on much better cruise missiles that can evade radar detection, that we can put a bigger warhead on them, and they are a hell of a lot cheaper to build because of the speed correlates with money, with cost, thing that I talked about in a previous video. I'm not going to redo that whole thing, but the idea is that other nations have said, well, we're not going to bother building hypersonic missiles because actually it's just not worth it. We can do more damage, more effective damage for a whole lot less money. So that's where it kind of is there. Anyway, just to carry on, Pac2 and Pac3. So today's American Patriot system operates interceptors from two primary families, Pac2 and Pac3. Though even the Pac2 missiles are far cry from their siblings employed in the 1990s. Incredibly, both Pac2 and Pac3 interceptors are actually launched by the Patriot system before it has even secured what's known as a weapons grade lock or a targeting solution for the inbound aircraft or missile. Instead, the weapon is deployed in what's called the initial flyout stage of its guidance approach, where it is then fed active guidance information from the Patriot's radar array until it gets close enough to the target to transition from the Patriot's radar system to its own onboard guidance systems. This results in an extremely short window of time between an aircraft, for instance, being notified of the radar lock and the weapon itself actually reaching its target. Okay, so Pac2 Gen T. So Pac2 missiles are interceptors that benefit from Pac1 and Pac2 updates discussed above. I didn't really discuss that. However, the modern Pac2 Gen T, or Guidance Enhanced Missile Tactical, is opposed to the Gen C, with the C denoting cruise missile, is a modernized iteration with a number of further enhancements to improve its performance against tactical ballistic missiles. So Pac2 can still be used in that iteration, at least, against ballistic missiles. And this all depends on which missiles are provided, and whether that affects the launchers that you use, etc., etc. These interceptors come equipped with a new proximity fuse for their explosive fragmentation warheads, which represents one of the significant operational differences between these weapons and the kinetic-based Pac3 interceptors. What that means, as I understand it, is so you've got the ballistic or cruise missile or whatever it is, or airplane flying here, and then a Pac2 of this sort has a proximity fuse. So as it gets near, it explodes, and the entity, is taken out by all the stuff that explodes, rather than a kinetic one which goes into the entity that's flying through the air. Those, I think, are the two differences there. The Pac2 Gen T is also equipped with a new low noise oscillator in the nose that allows for improved targeting of aircraft and missiles with a low radar cross section. These interceptors entered service in 2002 and saw significant success in Iraq the following year. So as the interceptor missile approaches the target, its active seeker will steer the missile to the target. A Pac2 Patriot missile will detonate in the vicinity of the threat missile, whereas a Pac3 will seek to impact the warhead of the threat ballistic missile. In contrast with the experience of Desert Storm, Patriot interceptors defeated every ballistic missile they managed during the 2003 Operation Iraqi Freedom. Since 2015, Patriot has successfully engaged scores of missiles and drones in the Yemen missile war. Israel has likewise used it a number of occasions to defeat drones, aircraft, and other threats. Although there is some questioning about some of the data, I think, in a previous article I shared with you. Right, Pac3, MSE, and CRI. So while the Pac2 missiles use blast fragmentation, as I mentioned, the smaller and more modern Pac3 missiles leverage hit-to-kill technology to destroy targets with sheer kinetic force. Another important difference is manufacturer. While Pac2 missiles come from Raytheon, Pac3 interceptors come from Lockheed Martin. As such, the Pac3 missiles are completely new, clean sheet designs meant to maximize the Patriot air defense system's capability set. The Pac3 missiles use an active Ka band, or I don't know if that's car band, radar seeker for terminal guidance into the target with 180 solid fueled altitude control motors, ACM, in its forward section to allow for heightened maneuverability. Despite the leap in performance, Pac3 missiles are much smaller than Pac2 interceptors, reducing their overall range, despite the interceptors' improved aerobatics, allowing them to defend a larger overall area. The Pac3 MSC or Missile Segment Enhanced is slightly larger and offers different capabilities than a Pac3 CRI, which stands for Cost Reduction Initiative. It's the CRI ones I think that Ukraine have been given. So on and so forth. So that's what a broad kind of explanation of what they do. This table might help. So missile Pac2 GEM-T, Pac3 MSE, Pac3 CRI. So you get 1 per container, 3 per container, 4 per container. Cruise missile intercept range 99 miles for the Pac2 GEM-T, 75 miles and 40 miles for the Pac3 MSE and CRI. Aircraft intercept the same, and ballistic intercept range Pac2 undisclosed, Pac3 MSE 44 miles and Pac3 CRI 22 miles. So those ballistic missiles like the Kinzhals would be taken out much closer to the Patriot system than other threats. So on and indeed so forth. I won't go much more into that, but you get the idea. I thought there was another image that I've not shown you yet. Yeah, it kind of, no, it wasn't that one. I seem to have lost it. Oh well. This one. Right. So again, I meant to discuss this at the beginning, but I just went past it. So one, the radar set. The radar sweeps the sky for threats. If an incoming object is found, the radar helps determine if it is a missile, fighter jet, cruise missile, or a remotely piloted vehicle. Two, control station operators communicate with friendly forces, monitor threats, and prioritize targets, but the system is capable of working autonomously. Missile launcher pods points and fires a missile which is shipped ready to launch in a canister. A missile can be made ready to fire in less than 9 seconds. The launcher can be remotely located from the radar. So this is the idea that a Patriot battery has been destroyed. It's like, well, no, it's spread out over like a kilometer, maybe even 30 kilometers away. You can get some parts of it. So you would need a tactical nuke to take out an entire battery in one fell swoop. The missile is tracked by the radar set and guided to the target with help from the control station's computer and its own homing sensors. Pac3 missile destroys targets by ramming them, 16 per launcher, length 17 feet, weight 688 pounds, speed Mach 5 and above. So that's hypersonic itself. Guidance Enhanced Missile Plus, the GEM Plus, warhead explodes near the target, 4 per launcher. Missile features enhanced fusing and guidance capabilities, 17.4 feet, 2,000 pounds, so a lot heavier, speed of Mach 5 and above as well. So just to add to that, Thomas Tyner says, at the moment, there are no extra Patriot batteries for Ukraine because the stored batteries are Pac2 and Ukraine needs Pac3 and upgrading takes months. Although you could argue that Pac2, as we have seen, could still be really useful. In 1989, the German Air Force fielded 36 Pac1 batteries, which were soon reduced to 30. Then only 24 were upgraded to Pac2. Then 5 batteries were sold to Spain and 3 batteries to Jordan. Of the remaining batteries, 13 were updated to Pac3, but not the trucks carrying the launchers, which therefore can only hold 8 times Pac3 missiles and not the usual 16. Of the 13 batteries, 12 are in service, while the 13th was donated to Ukraine. Now, some info I'm not 100% sure about because the Pentagon budget is so convoluted. As far as I can discern from Pentagon files, it costs $67.5 million to upgrade 1 battery from Pac2 to Pac3. And the upgrade and production capacity for Patriot batteries is 4 to 5 per year. So you can upgrade from Pac2 to Pac3 at the cost of $67.5 million, and you can do 4 or 5 of them a year. Currently, Patriot batteries are built for Morocco, Poland, Romania, and Switzerland. US Army has 50 batteries and claims it needs every one of them due to the constant demands by EUCOM, Indo-PACOM, and CENTCOM to always have Patriot battalions on station. Of the 16 US Army battalions, 1 is in Germany, 1 rotational in Poland, 1 rotational in the Middle East, 2 in South Korea, 1 in Japan, 10 in the US. To give Ukraine more batteries ASAP, the US Army would have to part with some of its batteries, which the Army refuses. The most likely course will be that Biden will order to upgrade stored batteries for Ukraine. Personally, I would prefer that Biden to order the Army to hand over 2 more batteries ASAP, but I have little hope for it. P.S. As far as I know, the Royal Netherlands Air Force had 4 Pac-1 squadrons and upgraded only 1 to Pac-3. Where the other 3 are, I don't know. But then someone else says, excuse me, but Pac-3 is not an upgrade from Pac-2. It's an alternative munition system for a different type of target. Pac-2 would be very useful in combat zones and frontline border cities to build a large no-fly radius for jets, since Pac-3 is primarily against missiles. And then Thomas Tyner replies, Patriot Advanced Capability 3 is a complete redesign of the Patriot system. New radar launchers, software, interceptors, weapons control computer. Pac3 is backwards compatible with Pac2, but Pac2 is only usable with Pac2 missiles. So there's the kind of, I guess, refinement of what he was saying there. So anyway, there's a little synopsis of Patriot. I think it's really useful to give an understanding of what it does, because we're going to be hearing, I assume, more about it as we go forwards in this conflict. Okay, right. I'm going to go on to talk about funding from a comment from Carl R. There's a bunch of comments I want to share with you today. I don't know if I have time to do them all. Another perspective about how many billions of dollars the US is given to Ukraine is to look at the overall size of the Department of Defense budget. According to a recent press release, the DoD has requested $842 billion for 2024. That's an increase of $26 billion from 2023, and an increase of $100 billion from 2022. That gives you expenditures of $732 billion, $817 billion, and $842 billion. In the absence of the Ukraine war, the expenses would presumably have risen at about the rate of inflation, figuring 8% in 2023 and 5% for 2024. The budget would normally have gone 732 billion, 791 billion, and 830 billion. That implies, quote, extra expense of 26 billion in 2023 and 12 billion in 2024. Much of this has probably gone to Ukraine. Thus, 30 to 40 billion is probably a reasonable guess as to the total cost of contributions to Ukraine. And 170 billion, and I know people like Trump have been saying that number, is not. This is a really good analysis. I love this, because actually that's surely got to be the most accurate way of doing this, which is, okay, well, how much was the US? And difficulty here, you could refine it even further if you knew what they were going to spend. So if they knew what their projected budgets were, and I'm sure they did know this. So if they'd had big expenditures, were they going to ask for even more in 2023 or 24, irrespective of the Ukraine war? I don't know. But in the absence of that, what did they spend before the war? What did they spend in the first year of the war? What did they spend in the second year of the war? Account for inflation. And what's the difference? And that difference is how much the Ukraine war has cost in US aid, US military aid. There you go. It's 30 to 40 billion, not the 170 billion that some critics are claiming. That's a really good comment. Thank you for that. My commenters are awesome. You're all brilliant. As I always clarify, actually, not all of you, but most of you. Jack Watling, who we've already heard from the Royal United Services Institute, says, numbers in war, a thread. I want to write this because it highlights some significant dilemmas in writing about the ongoing conflict, and it can hopefully help readers interpret and properly use reports. And here he refers to, okay. Well, today, my colleague Nick Reynolds and I published Meat Grinder, Russian Tactics in the Second Year of its invasion of Ukraine, in which we report that the airview are losing 10,000 drones a month. And this is what Shashant Joshi just reported on. So I've given you a little break before coming back to this. Okay, how robust is this number? Is it plausible that the AFU are losing 332 drones per day? Well, drones are being used for reconnaissance, strike, and situational awareness across 1,200 kilometers of front and dozens of kilometers of depth. Each platoon tends to keep two up. I'm not going to go into tactics here, but both sides need them for situational awareness. Then command posts put them up to see what's going on. Then artillery units do recce with them, special forces as well. Then drones are launched for the purposes of strikes. Jury-rigged loitering munitions are used throughout operational depth, including by saboteurs. In those areas, there are significant ongoing operations. It's not unusual to have 25 drones aside for each 10 kilometers of frontage. A lot of those drones are non-hardened commercial drones. A lot of them have to stay up to provide situational awareness, irrespective of the electronic warfare threat. The loitering munitions don't come back, irrespective of whether they destroy a target. So the consumption rate is high. So it is quite easy to get to 323 loss per day, but the numbers are also extremely variable. More skilled pilots lose fewer drones, far fewer drones. Drones in artillery units can plan their routes, can work down the seams in the electromagnetic spectrum where infantry units can't. Thus, the head of Ukrainian artillery noted that while the infantry get through a drone in an afternoon, in the artillery they survive much longer. Consumption does not differ between just differ between units, but also depends on the level of operational activity ongoing at a given time. Thus, the actual number of losses will fluctuate massively day by day. How many are being lost? If the AFU had a unified logistics system, it could be simple to track, but it is not the case though. Across Ukraine, drones are being crowdfunded, gifted by Ukraine's partners, and are mass produced by Ukrainian private companies. Then there is the fact that drones are being used by the Ukrainian ground forces, by the territorial defense forces, by the National Guard, the border guards, and Ukraine special services, and they don't all draw from the same stores. Thus, the Ukrainians don't know how many drones they are operating. So, how confident I am in the number 10,000 per month? As an exact number, I'm not. The actual total varies month by month and day by day and is not closely tracked, but consumption is definitely high, very high. So if the figure isn't exact, any neatly rounded figures are suspicious. Why use it at all? Firstly, because it is the number we got from the Ukrainian General Staff and from the part that has the best data. Other organizations concurred that the number was reasonable. Putting a number to consumption is important in making the policy relevant point. The point is, unhardened UAVs, unhardened drones are disposable tools like munitions and get consumed very rapidly. You need them in your force and you need them to be cheap. If we weren't confident in the number, why use a number at all? Because if we'd written you need lots of UAVs because many get destroyed, this would do nothing to give a sense of the scale of consumption. It would not help bound the problem set. Let us suppose that this month the actual loss rate is 9,000-ish. Does that change the policy implication? No. If it were 5,000, then that would be a meaningful deviation from the number we gave, but that would just be a random number. 10,000 was a number given by the AFU. The challenge here is that numbers can be necessary in getting the right message across, while also being misleading in their exactitude. It is important that any numbers coming out of a war are read in this context. And actually, you can apply that reasoning to the daily general staff figures that I give. You know, they aren't going to be exact. They do give you something to work with, and they do give you an indication, a reflection of what's going on, and you can see trends. And so then, if the number of troops from one day to the next suddenly doubles, it doesn't really matter that it's 500 going to 1,000. Like, there might be extreme inaccuracy in those numbers, but the idea is that the Russian casualties in this context have doubled from one day to the next. So something's happened. So then you start going, okay, well, what's happened? What's going on the front line? Okay, this is happening there and that's happening there. Right, now we can understand that change. So the numbers aren't so important in and of themselves, but in what they tell you, the story that they give. Right, as we come to the end here, Brian Ivy has a great comment to my fellow Republicans that are skeptical of support. So he's obviously a US Republican, great supporter of the channel. Thank you, Brian. To my fellow Republicans that are skeptical of support for Ukraine, let me leave you with some thoughts about a future Russia as an existential threat. One, The Soviet Union was capable of producing a tank and artillery cadre of 10,000 units each. Uh, Two, it follows that in the future, Russia could do this again. You laugh at the current state of Russian military industrial complex, but recall it took 30 years to tear it down. It might take 10 years to reconstitute. It can be recreated. Three, Hitler told the world exactly what he would do. He was ignored. Russia is telling you exactly what it will do: reconstitute the Russian Empire. You can ignore it at your peril. Four, Ukraine is similar to Germany in the remilitarization of the Rhineland, excluded territory in the 1930s. France alone could have crushed that effort and removed Hitler from power. Instead, we got World War II. Imagine 40 million Ukrainians strong being picked for mobilization against NATO. That was the clear intent. Five, the removal of dictators is notoriously difficult. It's likely Putin will still be in power after Ukraine, and his plans will not change. Whatever happens in Ukraine, his interference in European politics to promote division and weakness to achieve his goals and the acquisition of other territories will continue. He will absorb Belarus and other territories east without a doubt. And indeed, they've, as Michael Weiss in Yahoo News has reported in his three articles on the three leaked reports, Russia has intentions on Belarus and has produced a strategy for that, intentions on Moldova and has a strategy for that, and intentions on the Baltic states and has a strategy for them. So, yeah, that leads into his point 5 there. 6, the need for militarily strong Ukraine to join NATO to be a barrier to moves westwards along with Finland and Poland is desired. The extended frontier threat might blunt his future aspirations. 7, the support of the war is pushing Russia's plans back at least 10 years. 8, support for Ukraine is far cheaper in blood and treasure than a direct future war with a remilitarized Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, Moldovan state. Think about this before you enter a debate on the wisdom of supporting Ukraine. That's really great. Thank you so much for that, Brian. All really good points, and I agree with them wholeheartedly, 100%. Okay, well, that brings us to the end. The last thing I was going to say, if some of you have joined the channel recently, see that a few people in the comments call me like legend or legend of the universe. You think that's really weird. Why are they adulating him so much? He's just some random dude blurting out stuff from Twitter on YouTube. Whatever. This just want to re-explain to those who have just come in. Sometime back, the Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov said he would start up a new award called the Hero of Chechnya, and he started this medal and said, right, and the first person to receive this is me, himself, Ramzan Kadyrov. So he started this award and gave it first to himself. And I took the mickey out of him, saying, "What a plonker!" He is a grade A plonker, right? But just a bit of a dangerous one. And I said, look, I could make up any award and just award it to myself. For example, Legend of the Universe. So there you go. I'm Legend of the Universe. I've just awarded that to me. It's true. It must be true because I said so. Anyway, that's how it's taken the mickey, and that's why people say that. I just wanted to just explain. Otherwise, people think there's a bit of a weird community here. They're just popping along to it. Anyway, enough blathering from a blithering idiot. Blabbering. Words are too difficult. I've told you they're difficult. I do struggle. I'm going to give up now. That is now.